Well, Dr. Book, thank you for being with us today and helping us to begin the year of Numen Lumen. Numen Lumen happens on Thursday mornings at 9:50, and we would like to talk to folks about and talk to you about the theme that we have set. For the foreseeable future, we're going to be online, and we're hoping that folks will tune in. We've set the theme this year called Bridging to Hope, because we feel like we need a way to think about not just positivity, but about what roots us and carries us forward in the midst of challenge. And so we set this theme before we knew more of what this year would be like. We'll be telling personal stories. Our speakers will be telling personal stories about when they have chosen hope or acted in hope, or where hope is created for them and where their hope comes from. So we thought we might just have a quick conversation with you about what brings you hope during this time.
And I think that's a great topic for this time, and I think it will give people an opportunity to talk about what I know one of the saints has said are the essential ingredients for hope. And the way I remember it is that hope has two daughters, anger and courage. And it resonated with me, and it was one of the early lessons that we had. I grew up Catholic, so we had a catechism where we would learn about the Catholic faith. And you know, you don't normally think of hope and anger and courage all together in one bucket. But the truth be told, my life experience, the most times I've been willing to truly change have been from points of pain. They haven't been when things are going well. It's usually when I've tried my will to make things go the best way I thought, and it still hasn't erupted in how, you know, in a solution or in something that I feel good about. And so that's when I've turned that anger into bringing a power greater than myself into the equation, and spending time thinking and meditating about surrendering to that power greater than myself. And it's in that, and certainly the pain, I think, of realizing how little control we have, right? And the fear that causes during this pandemic. But at the same time, I don't know about you, but I've also had so many important moments of understanding over the last few months, new awareness, new growth, that in fact it is very hopeful for that we can bring about change that truly makes a difference.
I was thinking recently about our awareness of things being uncovered, and our awareness of the need to change, and that felt to me like a call for hope, because if you know what needs to be changed, then you can move ahead. But if you don't, if it's all covered up, then you don't have a way forward. Mm-hmm. So tell me more about why we need to think about hope and why we need to talk about it.
I like that you've included the word bridge to hope, because it assumes what I think is true, in that it's not always easy to shift from a place of pain to a place of hope, a place of fear to a place of hope, you know, that it actually requires some bridging. And I would say we need each other to get there. There's real grief in what we've lost, in real tangible ways for many people in our community, people they've lost, a sense of security about their futures they've lost. You know, so that list is long and deep, and so being able to bridge with each other a way forward and a way to a more hopeful future. So I think it's a really important conversation for the fall, and having the space and the encouragement to take the time to attend to our wellness and well-being. I mean, I can't tell you how important I find even just 30 minutes in the morning in reflection, prayer, stillness, nature, to where so many spots where hope really does grow.
I wonder if you would see in this context of COVID and the stress that we're living with and the pain of political division in our country, if you would see hope as a kind of active resistance against all of those that we do together. If that's sort of what I heard you say just a minute ago.
Yes, I do think that hope is the environment where we can bring about, a way forward. I think so many people are hungry for deeper understanding about the new world, about the new tools, how they are going to change our work environment, how they're going to change our personal space, our personal lives. So people really are looking for opportunities to share and to take time to listen to each other and have a better understanding about what's next.
We do hope that people will come to Numen Lumen in our virtual way, and we are setting up some ways that folks can interact with speakers and ideas, not necessarily in a live form, but because we want us to think together. Numen Lumen is a chance for one person to tell her or his story, but we hope that provokes in us really a deeper reflection of what gives us hope and where the root of that is and what we do about that, not just for ourselves, but for all of us together. What does hope look like for Elon as an institution or as a community?
I think having the conversation about Numen Lumen, one of the assets we've learned about being virtual is it makes it easier for people, it makes it more accessible for people to enter the space that hadn't previously been able to physically come to Numen Lumen. And two, that there's a longer shelf life for it, meaning if I missed it on Thursday, I could watch it on Friday or the next week. And how, that's one of the assets. So that's a very hopeful thing that's occurred over this COVID pandemic. For Elon, one of the things that has really been on my mind is our traditions and how we work together have been in part those historical understandings of our institution. I've been reading about how we responded during the influenza. I've been reading about polio at Elon. And that has really helped me see how these important moments help us define our future as an institution. And just like you were saying, a resilient culture here, you've been feeling that resilience. Oh, we're coming back and we've learned new tools and it's going to be different, but the things we value will be steadfast in this new world. And so Numen Lumen is one of those things, right? But institutionally, that I see so much of that when I look at the history of Elon. So I know in many ways we are part of a pivotal time in the institution, how we respond, how we support each other, all helping us define who we're going to be on the other side of this. And I have felt very hopeful when I'm with the Elon community and hearing about how they're teaching, how they're supporting students, our career services, how they're helping Alamance County during this time and the Alamance Burlington school system. And each of those stories are part of the hope we have as an institution about our mission and what it looks like during this critical global crisis that we're in.
That's very hopeful for us. That fills me with a kind of hope that feels different than just optimism. I do think there's a difference between optimism and hope that grows out of a painful moment.
And just like when I was talking to the graduates, I said in the class of May, my heart really went out to those graduates because in March, at the beginning of March, right, we were in the best job market. They had secured most of them contracts and were headed out and thinking about their futures. And part of the pain of what we've been experiencing is the quick timeline of the pandemic. Like suddenly we went from, within 30 days of this to this in terms of some of those key markers of success that we think about outside of college, like employment. And I told the graduates from the class of 2020 that we were all going to go forward to new. And some of the concrete new things I mentioned that I really realized by May was this renewal that we were having with our families. That the COVID virus had put us back home with our families. And it was creating this renewal of family time, of family activities. I heard from many people that this was the most they had spent with their parents or their grandparents or brothers and sisters, other extended family in a long time. And just that renewal of that. I also felt this renewal of our understanding of the importance of science. You know, that it is through the ingenuity, through the sponsorship of discovery. And I think about that from an education, but I also think about it in terms of grants and federal funding, all the ways that we sponsor discovery. And then also the diversity of it, that it takes people, you know, from all walks of life to come together, the creativity that's needed, and the richness of that. To solve the world's challenges. So this awareness of going forward to new, right? That these new discoveries, these new learnings that we had. And I also think one of the painful new discoveries we had that we visually saw was that the world is not equal. And this disease was making it so clear that the world was not equal. We were seeing what inequality could cost people their lives. And we may have known that before from data, but I think the COVID gave us a front seat. I think it's giving us a front seat to it. And that, you know, we're going forward to new as well with that understanding. And there is a lot of hope in that because once you know something, you don't unknow it. Right? And it does change the way you engage.
I think that's about, as we talk about bridging to hope, those bridges between communities and between people who are activists and trying to build bridges that make a difference in all of our lives, in the lives that we have as a community and in the lives of people in our world. So. Well, thank you very much for this very tantalizing conversation about hope. I wonder if there's anything that you want to say at the end.
I really am grateful for the opportunity. I think chapel is the old version of Numen Lumen. When I look at the archives about chapel, and students were required to go to chapel, and there was a lot of angst about chapel in the Student Government Association back in 1968. But it is in our history. Even though we're not religiously affiliated anymore, we understand the liberty of conscience that is in our mission statement, right? And that you feed the soul in different ways. And so I'm so appreciative that our Numen Lumen celebrates that tradition still for Elon.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.